Hi everyone, it's lovely to see you. I'm Lorna and we are reading The Secret Lake by Karen Ingalls. And this is chapter 14, The Forgotten Clue. Each day for the next week, the children rose early to look for the moles, but they didn't appear. Stella passed the time composing coded Facebook messages to Hannah and lazing with her music and piles of books in patches of dappled sunlight on the lawn. Finally, she felt at peace in her new surroundings. She also felt sure that she would meet Emma again soon. Tom, by contrast, grew quickly impatient. If he couldn't see his tea inside his chimney, then he wanted to bring back some other secret clue, some proof that their adventure had really happened. His mood wasn't improved when he started having nightmares about being back in the house with Stella, Emma and Jack. Each time without fail, Crawley caught them from behind and locked them in the dark broom cupboard. And it was always at this point, when the door swung back, to reveal him stroking a long black whip, that Tom woke drenched in sweat and shivering. Charlie Green was usually hovering about in the dream somewhere too, watching everything from a strange distance. About 10 days after their return from the time tunnel, Tom awoke from just such a dream and lay looking around his room and listening to the birds singing outside. Finally, he got out of bed and crossed to his window. He gazed across the sun-drenched lawn and began to wonder. Had he and Stella somehow imagined the whole adventure between them? Had their move from Hong Kong affected them in some strange way? Deep in thought, he dressed himself. He crossed once more to the chimney. Once more, he looked up inside at the solid bricks. Slowly, he stood up and sighed. But then, as he turned and found himself staring at the 3 large stones that he had dug up at the beginning of the summer, and that now sat lined at the foot of his bed, a sudden thought struck him. A thought as unexpected as lightning from a clear blue sky. "Stella!" he shouted, bursting into her room. "What?" she said with a scowl. Hannah had left a message, saying she thought joining a history club and taking up potholing were the most boring things she could imagine, and by the way, could Stella please write normally? "Follow me," said Tom, holding up his trowel. "I think I've found my proof from the past." Proof? But Tom had already shot out of the door. With a shake of her head, Stella closed her Facebook page, then thundered down the stairs after him. "Tom, what are you talking about?" But her brother, who was tearing full pelt across the lawn, was too breathless to answer. "It's somewhere around here," he shouted, digging at a flower bed in full view of the houses. "Tom, you know you'll be grounded if Charlie Green catches you digging again." I don't care, shouted Tom, now on hands and knees, flicking up earth in all directions like a desperate animal. And then, quite suddenly, it appeared, almost exactly where he had thought it would. With the broadest of smiles, Tom leaned down and with his thumb and forefinger pulled a small battered cloth purse from the soil. The purse he had dug up at the start of the summer and then discarded. "What's that?" said Stella. "Look," he said proudly, "it's hers. It's Mrs. Gladstone's coin purse, the one they said was stolen. I thought it was a doll's purse when I dug it up the last time." He laid the purse flat in the palm of his hand. "See? There." Stella screwed her eyes up and looked closely at the worn-away cloth. Barely visible were 2 initials. The first she couldn't make out, but the second, if you looked carefully, resembled a very elaborate letter G. "G for Gladstone," whispered Tom. "Crawley must have thrown it away in the garden and taken the money." "You been digging up them molehills again?" The air filled with an eerie silence. Tom and Stella momentarily froze before turning to meet the dark stare of Charlie Green. Immediately, his eyes fell on the purse still lying in the palm of Tom's hand. For a split second, Stella thought his gaze flickered, but then he shifted his stare back to Tom. "Now, this really is your last warning, young Tom. Any more digging in this garden, I'll have you grounded." And with an expressionless gaze, he stomped off. "Why's that man always got it in for me?" said Tom crossly. Stella stood curling a lock of her blonde hair around her finger and staring after Charlie. Then she gasped. "Tom, do you think Charlie Green knows about the time tunnel too?" Tom's eyes jumped wide. "Maybe he takes Harry when he goes down it," Stella went on. No wonder poor Mrs. Moon's dotty. Tom stared into the distance, thinking through his encounters with Charlie. Pieces of a complicated jigsaw seemed suddenly to be dropping into place. You know, there's one way we could find out more, said Stella brightly. How's that? Murmured Tom, trying to gather his thoughts. Mrs. Moon, of course. Charlie's always having cups of tea with her. I think we should pay her a visit. Join me for chapter 15.